One of the most misunderstood parts of the piano are the pedals. Today, we're looking at pedals on a piano, literally looking at them. But there's sometimes 3, there's sometimes 2 on an older piano. Digital pianos have 3, keyboards come with 1 usually, and it looks like a square. So what is the deal with pedals? What are they for? We're gonna answer all the questions and we're gonna have fun doing it. We're not gonna show you our feet, but we will show you the pedals. Stick around.
Hi, this is Ted with Alamo Music Center in downtown San Antonio, Texas.
I'm Patrick Marr. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channels, check out our other videos, sign up for notifications, like our videos, leave us comments. We really appreciate the support. We love bringing you guys new content. Ted, pedals, they're heavy.
Hey, when I first started playing piano, I didn't use the pedals because I couldn't reach them.
They have those like extenders now for kids, right?
Yeah, they're like big giant shoes that go on top.
It's funny because sometimes you can tell how serious a kid is in piano if they when they come looking for a piano, they bring that like stool thing that it's pretty intense. But they do have extenders. We'll start without extenders for your feet. But pedals, it's like we said in the intro, it's a very commonly misunderstood thing. What are they for?
I guess this is a good place to start, right? We have a grand piano trap lyre set here. Mm-hmm. And on the back side, this is the important part, is there's 3 pedals and there's 3 rods, but they're not identical. The rods are different. I don't know if you've noticed that, but if you tear down and set up grand pianos a lot, you learn this pretty fast, that each one has kind of a different length because of how
what they operate.
Yeah, and this is literally a mechanical contraption that takes the energy from here, that gets pushed up, and it moves into a cantilever inside the piano. The far right pedal is the sustain pedal, and that picks all the dampers up off of the strings so that you have an open harp. And so there's a lot of effects you always hear in scary movies or in the drama in the tense scene. You press down on this pedal, open up like a harp and go, everything goes, so it kind of has that mystique sound, like when there's someone sneaking up on someone in a movie. And the far left pedal is the damper pedal. And what it does on a grand piano is it actually shifts the action over so that on the treble strings and on the double bass strings, instead of hitting 3 strings, the hammer's only hitting 2, and it's only hitting 1 on the other side. And it's hitting it with the softer part of the hammer. Mm-hmm. The middle pedal, I left that one last because on a grand piano and an upright piano, this is the one pedal that will function differently.
And on different grands it will function.
And on different grands and different manufacturers, different time periods. Mm-hmm. If you have a piano made in the 30s or 40s, it'll have one function. If you have a piano from, I'd say, mid-80s on, it very well could be a mute or a practice pedal. Mm-hmm. Particularly if you can push down and lock it in to the left, then it will have that felt that goes in front. At one time, there used to be a 4th pedal that was in here, and that pedal on some of the older upright pianos actually had a bunch of little, almost like brass tacks that would go in front of the hammers, and they would hang on string. And it worked exactly like the mute pedal does for the new function, but it would drop these little pieces of tin in front of the hammers right where they would hit the string, and they hung on a piece of material. So it gave you a honky-tonk sound, and you could turn that on and off at will instead of having to pull tacks out.
Effects. So it was like a guitar pedal. It was a guitar pedal on a piano. Oh, no.
Right. It was,
adding effects to your piano.
Adding effects. Now, there's one other function that I'm aware of. I'm sure there's others, but on the Fazioli grand piano, there's a 4th pedal. Mm-hmm. And what that pedal does is it actually raises the entire action from all the hammers from the shanks up, so that the hammers are closer to the strings. So not only do you have the damper effect, moving it over, you can also move them up closer. So it takes the function of the hammers moving closer on an upright piano, which is what the damper pedal does on an upright, and it puts it with a grand.
Yeah.
And so there's some people that swear by that feature. I've never played a grand piano where you could raise the hammers up. So that would be interesting. Now, what effects does this have?
Yeah.
And
And so the middle pedal too, you said on grand pianos it's a little bit different.
It is. I didn't talk about any of them yet.
Yeah, so what are some of those?
The first pianos that I remember playing when I was 6, 7 years old, this pedal was known as a bass sustain. On almost every piano you came across, wherever the double strings would start on the harp, all those down would lift up. So you could keep a long whole note without having to hold it down.
And then you can play.
And you can play up on the top.
And it's not going to sustain the same way.
Correct. Now on a lot of grand pianos that were made at that time, this is called the Sostenuto pedal. And it kind of is a quirkier invention of a pedal. And it's not one that works as simply as the damper or the sustain. This pedal is applied after you play a note. So you play a note or a chord, and then you depress this, and only the notes that you played and are holding down at the time you put the pedal down will stay sustained. So you can play around it. You can do chromatic steps, and every time you hit one of those, it'll keep ringing. And so those will ring continuously while the other ones will have the dampers on top. That's another effect.
That's like the most complicated one.
That's the most complicated one. And that is the one that some teachers that teach classical piano require their students to play and perform at least one or two pieces that use the Sostenuto pedal. So when they get to the collegiate program, they're not intimidated by any kind of literature that would have a Sostenuto pedal in it. In other words, they've been versed in it before. And the same thing is a lot of times when you get to collegiate level, players are graded on their pedaling, and it depends on the version of the manuscript that they're using for the classical piece. And this is the thing that's always debatable in classical music, is that Beethoven and Mozart and certainly Bach never put any pedaling into their music because it didn't exist at the time. So who put those pedal marks in some of those things? Well, those are supposedly piano theorist guys that are like brilliant and better players that interpret their music and say, well, if Beethoven had a pedal, he'd use it here. And so they put the pedaling in for students.
Wow.
So that's always a debated thing. Just remember that none of those pianos really had dampers or sustain. They had levers that you could do, like on a harpsichord, you had to use your knee. That would probably damper. I don't know if they had sustain on them or not. It took a while to get this developed.
And so on older grands, we sometimes see there's only two pedals. And that's leaving out the Sostenuto pedal?
That's leaving out the center pedal, the Sostenuto. You will almost always have a damper and a sustain.
And so the damper, again, on a grand, it shifts the key action over ever so slightly so that you're connecting with two of the strings instead of three of them on the upper register.
And you get a timbral tonal change. It's not as loud, but it's also a softer tone.
Yeah, and I think some of that has to do with the hammer. It's used to being struck right, and in standard position, and then you shift it over, and it's a little bit softer on the felt right there, which is.
The thing that's important to discuss on an acoustic piano, and I mentioned this is a mechanical contraption, with a cantilever. On a digital piano, you will find these same effects, including the Sostenuto on certain digitals. However, on a digital piano, they have gone from the ancient pedaling, which is on and off, to a gradient, which had 2 or 3, to now where they have a full range of field from 0 to 127 of partial pedaling. The advantage of having a mechanical device work for you is that you can use it not either full or off, but in between.
Gray area.
There's a gray area where you can have the sustains maybe bouncing on top of the strings from time to time. The piano may almost always be an open harp, but throughout, wherever the player puts the beats in there, they can stop the overall sustain and just keep it sustained so it sounds like there's always ringing, but it's not getting blurry, so to speak. And then the same thing with the damper pedal is there's all the way, and then there's in-betweens, which are different gradients, and it'll give you different parts of the hammer hitting the string. So these are things that you learn to kind of control and manipulate and have fun with when you're playing. When you go to a digital piano, you have to check to see what the MIDI specifications are and what the alignment is for those pedals and how are these pedals going to work for me. The other advantage about pedals on a digital piano is that when you get to an organ sound, you can do something that's not physically possible on an organ, which is sustain notes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, and so if you ever play like a Hammond B3 part and on a digital keyboard,
You can hold down the sustain.
You can hold down the sustain, and you'll notice it takes about a fraction of a second before you let off because B3s don't sound like that. It's just a violation of the sound. It just feels wrong. It's just everything goes wrong, and you just turn it. You just no pedal.
And then sometimes they also have like the capability to add Leslie this to speed up
That's the part that I love.
Yeah.
Okay, is that you can actually use the left damper pedal on a digital, or you can assign it to wherever you want. But usually it's the left pedal. In fact, most of them come with that set as the default, and that's like using a toggle switch on
You just hit
on
there
a
with your foot.
B3. You can pump it so it never really goes fast, and it never really goes slow, but it just kind of hovers there in that middle gray area.
And then there's some manufacturers like Yamaha and they'll do on the like classical guitars, they'll do like a hitting the soundboard on the top of the guitar, and it won't be like a dunk 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 sound.
Now, and also if you're using, it depends on the sounds that are coming out of the digital piano. Some of the gospel and choir sounds, when you hit them, you can actually get the whole choir to change the pitch, and
to
you
bend.
can either slide or bend up into it, and even not just the choir, but even on the guitars.
Yeah, exactly.
And it does take practice. That is a part of working the instrument, just like the vibrato and everything else. And it really is, it makes for a lot of fun.
It's
to play
cool. So
keyboard.
yeah, on a digital piano, the pedals are more versatile switches, and so when you're playing the piano sound, they're going to obviously mimic the mechanical action of a piano trap, and you have sustain, damper, sostenuto pedals working on your piano sound. But once you start uncovering like some of the cooler features, I'm sure there's even a way to turn off record start and stop with the pedals.
You can have your rhythm section or your play along in the piano room. Stop and start.
So yeah, the pedals on a digital are very versatile, and you can kind of use them to your advantage. So that's one of the benefits of getting a digital piano that has 3 pedals, uncovering that technology, and 90% of people who have it will never get to that stage of it. But manufacturers will kind of put those small things in there, like, oh, when you're playing saxophone, it's going to sound like you're blowing just air through it when you press the middle pedal. Just fun things like that. But as far as on the acoustic instrument, again, your sustain is going to be your far right. Your damper is going to be your far left, and that behaves differently on an upright versus a grand.
Absolutely, they work different in gradient. They work in between gray areas. They work differently as well. And you had mentioned that electric pianos had one pedal, and that's true because the Fender Rhodes and the Wurlitzer had the one sustain pedal, which is all that most of those instruments that came with the pedal, the clavinet and those, it was only a sustain. They had no way of building a damper into it, and that I don't know if you could put a damper into any of those the way those keyboards were set up, because they had different hammers and different type of mechanisms.
Yeah, and so I think it's and then you talk about portable instruments. They come with just this. If a keyboard's going to come with one pedal, it's going to be the sustain pedal.
The square one.
Yeah, and they might have a pedal one too, but it's going to be a sustain function, and really that's what percentage? 90% of what you're going to be using on the pedals as well is going to be your sustain pedal on and off. The other ones are a little bit more advanced, but we just wanted to talk about pedals because that's always a question. It's like, do I need all 3 of them? What are they for? Why would I use them? And so it's one of those just topics we wanted to kind of cover real briefly. If you guys have a piano at home and you use the 3 pedals or something different that we didn't cover, please let us know because that's exciting. So 3 pedals on an acoustic instrument. On the middle one, sostenuto on a grand, or a practice pedal on an upright. A lot of the times you get the felt that comes down between the strings and the hammers, kind of dampens the whole sound.
Now they're calling that the silent pedal. That's how they did it. Silent pianos, that's one where instead of dampering, it just turns it off entirely.
Yeah, so there's silent pianos now that have that middle function that does that. So just very cool piano world. It's a very mechanical thing, and so these 3 pedals really, they do something, and what they do is important to the usability of the instrument. On digital pianos, it's a whole new world because you have basically a computer that's capable of taking 3 pedals and doing whatever you want. So very interesting. Ted, thank you again.
You're welcome.
Ted Barstool, I'm Patrick Marr with Alamo Music Center. You can find us online at alamomusic.com. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And if you have used pedals for really fun stuff, please let us know so we can talk about it here. Thanks for watching.